And just like that, we're live. Hey friends, Mike Mutzel here with the Metabolic Health Summit. Super excited to be with Ron Penna, co-founder of Quest Nutrition and Epigenix. Epigenix. I get this dude confused. So super excited to have you on, Ron. So you've been in the keto space, personally on the ketogenic diet for 20 years.
I've been low carb for 20 years.
Low carb for 20 years.
Yeah.
And you've co-founded Quest Nutrition in 2010. So you've seen this space really grow and evolve.
Absolutely.
I think that's really interesting. Where do you see things? Where do you see people making mistakes and pitfalls now in 2019?
Probably the biggest thing is you hear people say they're on a ketogenic diet, but keto diets are the only diet that you can actually numerically validate whether someone's doing it or not. Just take their finger, take a precision extra meter, and you'll know very quickly, hey, are they actually doing what they're saying? So it's kind of like a video game, and you can kind of go through an addiction phase where you're like going through the strips, and they really need to be blood strips. The urine strips don't work like they're supposed to.
Right. Which meter are you able to say which meter you prefer, or?
I've done some validation. The two that I like are there's a Precision Extra meter, which is probably the most popular by Abbott Labs, and then there's actually a bovine meter, which is meant for cows, but it works really well. It only does ketones, but it works really well for that.
And people always are confused, like when should they track? Is it first thing in the morning, before a meal, after a meal? Do you have any sweet spots you like, or just?
Here's the thing. Personally speaking, my ketones go very low. In the morning, my blood glucose is elevated, so I was doing 7 to 10 measurements a day. Wow. That's crazy excessive, but I just found it amazing because I was on low carb for a long time, and when I found out about the whole concept of keto, really actually creating ketones, which is the definition of a ketogenic diet, I was doing them all the time. I was taking blood glucose and ketones before training, after training, and seeing, I'm one of those guys, I don't run super high. I have friends that hit 7 millimolar, and I had ketone envy, so I was chasing them. And I ended up actually losing a lot of muscle because I pushed my calories so low and I pushed my protein so low. It got my ketones high, but I definitively realized chasing that number really doesn't have much reality to anything to it. It's kind of fun, and you have to understand how your body reacts to foods, but keeping a lower level of ketosis for me is mostly where I am most of the time.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I think at some level it would be nice to really kind of see what the fatty acids are doing in the bloodstream to see. Because I think, like you said, you've been low carb for quite a while, so you're a good ketone utilizer.
Yeah.
A lot of people focus on the synthesis of ketones. We don't realize it's kind of a two-part equation, right? So if you're making them great, but also the ketolytic pathway is important.
Yep.
And I think, someone like yourself, you're fat adapted, you're athletic, you've been low carb for so long, your body's making these, but also utilizing them quite well. So, very interesting point.
And to back that up, the interesting thing is when I first tried fasting, I was eating more protein and more carb. And only when I pushed my protein down once and actually got really well fat adapted was I able to fast effortlessly. And prior to that, I'd kind of get a headache, even though it was low carb, which means I had to actually push through that protein threshold because my protein was always very high.
Right.
I was basically converting it to glucose. So that to me was fascinating. Man, I've been low carb for, at that point, something like, 15 years, but I had never pushed my protein out. I was afraid to do it. So that's, Dominic D'Agostino is one of the guys came to our office and we started talking about it. And for the first time in my life, I went to like 60 grams, which was super low. And then I started feeling differently too. And that's when I understood keto diets versus low carb. And there's a lot of people that think low carb is amazing, but there's another level of fat adaptation that you have to get glucose really low, and you can't do that without pushing protein down. Now, once you've done that, once you've passed through that doorway, you can take protein back up, and it doesn't affect my blood glucose anymore. But it did at the time, so it's kind of an interesting thing, and they've seen that with diabetics as well.
Yeah, super interesting. So what's your thoughts on the whole carnivorous diet movement and ketosis as a means to kind of cover two birds with one stone for some people that are getting into this?
So I have no GI issues, but I know that people that have a lot of GI issues, carnivore is amazing for them. And then secondarily, it's super easy. Like you can go to McDonald's, you can eat at fast food, and when you don't have the vegetable component, your possibilities open up. So I eat pretty close to carnivore most of the time. I eat vegetables. Yeah, I do. And when you eat that way, your protein's automatically higher because it's very hard to get a fatty cut of meat that's 70% fat without adding some fat to it. But that's something I've been doing probably 2 years.
Good for you.
So I do eat quite a bit of meat.
And when it comes to meat quality, where do you stand on high quality grass-fed, hormone-free, and so forth? Or do you think, well, as long as it's fits your macros?
So I've looked at this a lot.
Yeah.
I can't definitively tell you, but if you can't measure it, it's pretty tough to think that there's going to be an effect. And I have a feeling it's much ado about nothing. If you look at the amount of fat in a grass-fed versus a conventional cut. There is a little bit more omega-3, but there's so little polyunsaturated fat to begin with, it's not a big deal. And then, people talk about hormones, etc. This is something I just read articles a couple of weeks ago about this. I can't definitively say, but I have a feeling if there's a difference, it's so minor compared to just, the macros that you're doing that I'll eat conventional, I'll eat anywhere really.
Okay, yeah. I think that's pretty interesting. What we'll see now down the road is like the epigenetic factors coming in, like the RNA and mRNA coming out from the food. So I think that's pretty interesting. But getting back to what you guys are doing at Quest Nutrition, so when did you first come out with an MCT product? Just historically,
that was probably 4 years ago, something like that. Yeah, about 4 years. And we wanted a powder. I've used MCT oil in the past, and MCT can, it'll hit your small intestine very, very quickly. So that's why we came out with it. We plated it on a fiber. Everybody else was plating it on maltodextrin at the time.
Right.
We wanted to keep the carbs super low. And there's still people that they swear by that product.
Yeah. And what are the best usages or time of day, pre-workout, post-workout, in the morning for MCT in your eyes?
I think people like MCT, if I can speak honestly, because it jacks their ketones up and it makes them feel like something amazing. But I think it's a little bit of a trick. I think the whole thing about MCT is it lets you, like it's great in coffee and people use it, they add it to protein shakes or whatever. I think it's a fat that converts super well to ketones. And there's times when, cognitively it might make sense. I know some people who swear by it when they have to do deep focused work, they take MCT. And that's probably the only time that I would say people feel it. It's other than that, it's like a fat, and you want to use it whenever you want to take your fat up to play with your macros.
Mm-hmm. Personally, that's what I do in the morning, like before I have to do any cognitive, a lot of research writing, things like that. Right. I like the MCT for that purpose.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what you guys are doing in the pet world with Epigenix and cancer and so forth for animals. I think that's really exciting.
So basically what we did, I think this was probably going back 5 years at this point, we wanted to study ketogenic diets and we wanted to see how effective they were in cancer. Well, the problem with humans is you've got all the psychological factors, and unless something's changed, you can't cage people. So we had to say, hey, what's the next best thing? Right. Animals. They don't cheat on their diet. Metabolically, they're a lot like humans. So we basically had a 53-acre ranch, and we went to kill shelters, and we got dogs that had cancer, which was surprisingly difficult because they know how to put a dog down when they have cancer. They don't adopt those dogs out, but they wouldn't give it to us because they were worried what we were going to do with it.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, that was a multi-year process, and we got a PET scan. And a PET scan is not even used in veterinary medicine. It's really the gold standard in human medicine. And we would image him on day 0, day 60, and day 120. And we kept on very high-fat ketogenic diets and documented the whole thing. And we've published a few things, but we've been careful what we said because extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. Ketogenic diets in cancer have very interesting results. We actually did 3 human studies as a result. One of them is actually speaking here, Dr. Jethro Hu. We did a brain cancer study with him. And I won't speak for him, but let's just say that keto started in the epileptic space. It may have even stronger effects on in the cancer space. And we have certain dogs that have like hemangiosarcoma. It's the number 1 killer of dogs. Let's just say its effects are very powerful.
That's amazing. And so from a compliance standpoint, how hard is that for pet owners to adopt their diet to the dogs? Because dogs don't have the taste perception issues that we do, right? I mean,
that is
easier.
A really interesting question. I have been extremely disappointed in pet owners' abilities to do the diet. And that is interesting psychologically because obviously people have problems, staying on a ketogenic diet, some of them. But you'd think your dog, you love your dog, and you're not getting any of the gustatory, organoleptic qualities, so it should be really easy. So what I've learned, that one of the biggest problems in health and cancer is love. If we could just eliminate love, oh my gosh, it'd be great. We could put these dogs on amazing diets, but people love their animals. So it's tough, and people struggle with that. There's dog obesity is an issue. And we show people how to take their dog's blood glucose, which is going back to what we're talking about. You don't have to believe what we're saying. You can take a dog. I'll give you one stat. So we did thousands of blood glucose draws over a 4 or 5 year period, and our average blood glucose for a dog was, I'm making this up, I think it was 61.3. The average blood glucose for a regular kibble-fed dog was 94.6. That number I think is right. So it's a 50% delta. So, if you don't think that has an impact on your dog's health, it's pretty crazy, and you can do it. Just take a precision extrameter. You can take the blood, and you can see their blood glucose and ketones. Dogs don't show ketones unless they're on keto diets, and their ketone levels are much lower than humans. But their blood glucose, most of our dogs ran in the 50s blood glucose at keto pet.
That's amazing.
So
that's really cool. And you have tutorials on your website to teach people how to get more, like learn how to do this.
Yeah, you can, if you go to ketopetsanctuary.com, you can go. There's a keto pet calculator. You can just, the reason no one ever studied it, just go to the grocery store. You can make the diet. You know, it's very simple. It's not, for a lot of people, it's not simple. I won't lie. But it's very doable.
It's time consuming.
It's time consuming, but it shows you put in the dog's weight, how active they are, et cetera, and it'll spit you out a recipe. You can pick, what kind of meat you want to use. Do you want to use butter? Do you want to use coconut oil, et cetera, et cetera.
That's amazing. Congrats for doing that.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been that has been a lot of fun. We've learned a lot because we've removed the psychology element out of it. So you can caloric restrict a dog. So we had dogs that came in massively obese. And within 3-4 months, you couldn't tell. I mean, they looked like champion athletes. It's pretty amazing.
It's amazing. Yeah, they're so resilient. Yeah, I really want to encourage, because a lot of people don't realize when they go to the pet food store, they see it says organic on it, or it says like grain-free, but it's highly processed. There's all these, the same things we're trying to avoid here in the human nutrition space is in the pet food. So
I'll even challenge you on camera about highly processed.
Yeah.
You could make an amazing highly processed food. What happens, you got to understand what's in it. Processing in and of itself isn't a problem. It's the fact that basically, if you look at the labeling restrictions, you can't really talk about carbohydrates. So unless you send it in for analysis, we've taken a lot of the major pet foods. You're talking about 46 to 78% carb is basically what makes up dog food. And you don't even really need to do that. You can take your dog's blood glucose, put them on a ketogenic diet, it's a very different number. Put them on a regular kibble diet, it's a completely different number. So, it's dog nutrition's in a worse place than human nutrition.
I can imagine. I mean, it has to be bottom of the barrel ingredients.
It is, and it's a price thing. It's just a price thing. But people love their animals, and they think they're doing great because, as you said, grain-free, but it's not a grain problem, it's a carbohydrate problem.
Yeah, great point. I guess final question here, where do you see keto going in the next few years, Ron?
I think that it's going to go through a pretty big growth. I think you maybe have 4 years where it's going to be, we used to be weirdos here, and now it's like, it's pretty mainstream.
Right.
And then I think like every diet, it'll disappoint them, and then you'll have the people that kind of fall off. I do think this time around, I don't think we're ever going to go back to the SnackWells days where people say, just avoid fat grams, it's that simple. Mm-hmm. So I think keto has had an impact on nutrition that is never going to go away. I think the whole idea of saturated fat, people will laugh at that in 10 years. But it's got to evolve. It's like fashion. People aren't just going to stay on keto diets forever, even though I think it's going to impact the way we eat forever. You're going to see people eating fat for years from now.
That's amazing. And where do you see the carnivorous diet moving?
Here's what that is going to be an interesting place because it's a battleground. You've got the plant-based people and you've got the carnivore people, and it's almost like a religious thing. And then I think there's the people in the middle that they're just going to look at the evidence and they're going to figure out which way to go. But I think that's not going to go away. I think that some of the things that inspire people towards vegetarian diets are very admirable. I think that the health side is going to come down on the carnivore diet. But it's actually for us weird people that actually care about this stuff. It's going to be a really interesting 10 years or something like that as that battle rages on. Yeah, really interesting stuff. Thanks for all the work that you're doing in the field. Thank you so much. And if folks want to connect with you or your companies, where should they go? What's the best website? Well, there's questnutrition.com, there's ketopetsanctuary.com, and then there's valiantpet.com, which is the dog food company. Awesome. Any one of those. Amazing. Thanks so much for coming on. Thank you. Appreciate it.